Have you ever tried to prove something to someone and you give them the proof they asked for, but then they tell you it's not enough? That's also a logical fallacy. It's called moving the goalpost. Picture an American football game with a set of goalposts on either end of the field. A player kicks a field goal and it looks like it's good, but then the goalposts jump out of the way and the ball totally misses them. Well, that's what happens when someone changes the rules during the course of a competition. Moving goalposts. For example, you could have a situation like this. By the way, this scene is based on a true story. Person who wants to rent a house. I'd like to sign a 3-month lease. Owner of the house. Oh, I only offer 12-month leases, but I'll let you sign a 3-month lease if you pay a whole lot of money, like $1,000 a month extra. Person who wants to rent a house. Okay, that sounds fair. Owner of the house. Surprised. Well, actually, I only offer 12-month leases, so no, never mind. I won't do it. In this case, the owner of the house set a goalpost expecting that the person wanting to rent would never pay that much money and they'd sign the 12-month lease instead. Then, when the person wanting to rent actually met the goal, the owner moved the goalpost. But is this really a logical fallacy? If the technique is used in an attempt to prove or disprove something, yes it is. Consider this next scene. Alice. Students should be able to take notes on computers if they want to. There's no evidence that handwriting notes is any better than typing them on a computer. Bob. Well, actually, there was a study at UCLA that concluded that when students handwrite notes, they mentally process them more carefully than they do if they're typing their notes. Alice. Well, that's just one study. One study is not enough to prove anything. Where's the logical fallacy? Alice made an argument and set the goalposts in the process. She didn't specifically say the goalposts are in this spot, but the fact that she asserted that there is no evidence to dispute her argument implies that if there were some evidence, she'd take back what she said. Then, when Bob presented some evidence, a counterexample to her conclusion, she moved the goalpost. She said that this was just one study and it wasn't enough to prove anything. It's true that one study alone is not a lot of evidence, but it provides some evidence, which was essentially what Alice asked for. Here's another example. Vitamin C salesman. You should take lots of vitamin C every day. If you do, you won't get sick. Joe. I've been taking 10 times the recommended daily amount every day for the past year, but I still have a cold. Vitamin C salesman. Well, obviously you didn't take enough. If you had taken enough, you wouldn't have gotten sick at all. In this case, the salesman has moved the goalpost for enough vitamin C. They didn't specify an amount in the first place, but you'd think that someone who has been taking 10 times the recommended daily amount would meet the criteria for lots. Maybe if Joe had talked to the salesman before he got a cold, the salesman would have congratulated him on taking enough vitamin C to keep him from getting sick. On the flip side, this is a goalpost that is easy for the salesman to keep moving. If Joe takes 20 times the recommended daily amount of vitamin C and still gets sick, what can the salesman say? You still didn't take enough. This is a goalpost that no one will ever meet. When is moving the goalpost not a logical fallacy? When the goalpost doesn't actually move, but only clarifies the original goal. Say you're teaching a class full of kids at church and they start tipping their chairs back. You tell them that each chair should have 4 legs on the floor. Then, some smart aleck kid lays his chair down sideways and says he's putting the legs on the floor, but no one said anything about the chair's feet. So, to amend your original statement to say that each chair should have 4 feet on the ground is not moving the goalpost. That's clarifying your original request. You know what you meant, and so do the kids. Even that smart aleck one. Our last fallacy of this section and of the whole course has one of the best names. This is the fallacy fallacy. Yes, you can even have a fallacy about fallacies. The point of the fallacy fallacy is this. Just because you found a logical fallacy in your opponent's argument does not mean that their conclusion is untrue, or that your opposing argument is correct. Let's look at this fallacy that we saw in Module 4. Premise. If I eat my spinach, then I will be very strong. Premise. I am very strong. Conclusion. Therefore, I ate my spinach. Now remember, this is an invalid conclusion because the premises don't say that eating your spinach is the only way for you to be strong. Maybe I ate my spinach, or maybe I didn't, but I ate my broccoli or my power pellets or whatever else might make me strong. Maybe I lift weights. The premises don't tell us what I did to become strong. Now let's bring in Edith. She says, the conclusion that you ate your spinach is invalid. That means you didn't eat your spinach. Well, there's the fallacy fallacy. Even though we've proven that the conclusion is invalid, that doesn't mean it couldn't still be true. According to the premises, it's possible that I ate my spinach. It's just not guaranteed that I did. On the other hand, it's not guaranteed that I didn't either. Back in Module 6, Fallacies of Distraction, we talked about the 1980 presidential campaign as an example of appealing to fear. One of the arguments going around went like this. Premise. If Ronald Reagan is president, he will start a nuclear war. Premise. If Jimmy Carter is president, he won't start a nuclear war. Conclusion. Vote for Jimmy Carter so there will not be a nuclear war. Now, there are a couple of fallacies in there. One of them is the appeal to fear, as we already discussed. Maybe some people specifically voted for Carter because of the above argument. They were afraid that Reagan would start a nuclear war. But there's another fallacy in there. Even if the premises of this argument were true, that Reagan would start a nuclear war and Carter would not, the conclusion is not necessarily true. Electing Carter does not guarantee that there would not be a nuclear war. Maybe Carter wouldn't start it himself, but maybe the Canadians would start it, or the Australians. This is where the fallacy fallacy comes in. Just because you found a logical fallacy in your opponent's argument does not mean that their conclusion is untrue or that your argument is correct. You could end up with a situation like this. Kathy. The premise that Ronald Reagan will start a war if he is president is just an appeal to fear. It's a logical fallacy. Dan. That means that the people who say that are wrong, so we shouldn't listen to them, and they say we should vote for Carter, so we've proven that they are wrong. Therefore, we should vote for Reagan, not Carter. Well, there's the fallacy fallacy. Now, there may be perfectly good reasons to vote for Reagan over Carter, or Carter over Reagan, but just because Carter's campaign used an appeal to fear is not one of them. Maybe Dan's personal philosophies are actually closer to Carter's, and he might have wanted to vote for him instead if he'd thought it out. Did you follow that? Here's one more example. This one's a little more straightforward. Flip. See my dog? He looks like a Dalmatian, but actually he's a cow. Gary. A dog can't be a cow. You must be crazy. Flip. You called me crazy. That's an ad hominem. Therefore, I can't be crazy. Gary. Anyway, Flip is appealing to the fallacy fallacy to prove that Gary is wrong. But as we can see, just because Gary committed an ad hominem doesn't mean that his conclusion is wrong. Time for our last module review. Let's go over these fallacies of omission one more time. Ad ignorantium arguments, or appeal from ignorance, or proof by failure to find counterexample, assume that something is true just because you don't see any evidence that it isn't. A loaded question basically comes preloaded with an answer. The no true Scotsman fallacy occurs when a counterexample is presented, but the other person dismisses it by changing the definition of the thing in question. Cherry picking is presenting only the evidence that proves your point and leaving out the rest. Moving the goalpost occurs when the proof asked for is provided, but then the person asking changes the request. The idea behind the fallacy is that just because you found a logical fallacy in your opponent's argument does not mean that their conclusion is untrue, or that your opposing argument is correct. Next up is one more quiz, and then it's a review over all the fallacies. I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of fun with this course, and I hope you have too. Thinking about words and fallacies and how they are used is pretty fun. At least I think it's fun. And understanding how they can work is becoming a more and more important skill all the time. Thanks so much for your participation. On my end, you have been a very important part of this project, and I cannot thank you enough. Way to go for sticking with the class.